All right, gang. Tonight we've got another good one lined up for you. We are going to talk about all those church folk that we genuinely know and love and how that affection impacts our ability to talk about being non-believers. And tonight I've got the lovely Miss Maya Adkisson with me coming up on Black Free Thinkers. All right. Welcome back to Black Free Thinkers. How you doing, Miss Maya Adkisson?
I am fighting a cold.
Oh, no.
It's just like, maybe Jay will forget again. Nope.
No, I did not. Sorry to disappoint you, but we're here. We're
Happy
here.
420.
Happy belated 420. Yeah. So yesterday was Easter, and this episode is kind of actually Easter related in a way. Because I was at an Easter gathering, and that was kind of the inspiration for this. So let me set the stage real quick, and then tell y'all where we're going, because we're talking about nice old ladies and the problem of reputation, and y'all probably like, what are you on?
Yeah, no, that's me with you usually, though.
All right, so I was at this pinochle party. It was like an Easter.
How old are you?
Old. Old. There was literally no one at this party, I think, under 60. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think under 50. I think young meant like under 50. So there's a house full of us, and it's a really nice party. And it's nice in like a whole bunch of ways. I mean, like the house is a really nice place, and it's decorated all Eastered out from top to bottom, and the food was fantastic, and we had wonderful appetizers, and we actually had like a sit down dinner, in the dining room table, Maya, with all the good stuff. Like it was crazy. And then, the playing is always super competitive in very mixed company. What I mean by that is a lot of times Pinochle can get like I play with the crowd every Wednesday with my dad and his friends, and it's pretty much only guys. And smaller games get to be that way, but bigger events are typically very mixed. And so I think there was like probably a really good ratio, maybe 50-50. Like it was hard to tell what the sex ratio slant was. So that was also really awesome, because it's just always good. It's just always more fun, I think, right? When company's mixed and there's some couples in there, and it's just more interesting. It's more of a vibe. So this was it was super fun. I loved it. Was super happy to be invited, and so I just want to put that out there. I'm not actually this. What motivates this is that it's a thing I can't crap on, right? It's a thing I can't poo-poo. I can't be upset about. I don't hate any of the people involved, right? And so here's what happened, right? When two things that I thought were worth talking about. One is people really regularly talked about their church and faith to the point where it might as well have been a church gathering. Like if we told you that the church actually put on this function from the conversation, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So that was kind of interesting, because it definitely clashes with like how it would have been maybe at a different host house. Let's say that.
Wait, and whose house was it again?
Just a really nice lady. I can't even think of her name actually.
No, I'm not asking her name, but just like I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, she's just one of the players. Yeah, no, I didn't say who the host was. So the host was a lady who's one of the players.
Let's just call her nice lady.
Nice lady number one, and she's super awesome.
Did she like invite her church the people? What do you?
No, I think no. So these are all pinochle players who have been in community with each other for ages. Probably maybe my whole life in a lot of cases. Like these people go back. Like, and they stay in touch with each other because the pinochle community is kind of like tight knit, because not, it's a game that like only certain people play, and they have to figure out like where games are, like who's hosting, and actually they've endured a lot of tragedy because of the pandemic. So there were certain games and the scene was like bigger pre-pandemic, and literally, unfortunately, like some of them either were lost during COVID or COVID affected their ability to get out, let's say, right? And so now it's a much smaller scene, and some of the more public, large events aren't happening anymore. And so people are like filling that gap with their house parties and stuff. And that's also how they find out about like what's going on for like tournaments and traveling and stuff like that. Okay. So it was an awesomely fun event. But what happened was when we sat down for dinner, the host like preached at us. not like nothing extreme. It was just like a few minutes, and like we had these little signs on our table at different places that said like, I don't know, like hope, salvation, forgiveness, whatever, right? Sure. And
like
so we
faith, hope, love kind of deal.
Yeah. And then we got the like, we know Easter is, we got our redemption through Jesus and the hope and all that good stuff, right? So it's like Jesus is the reason for the season.
Sure.
Type of speech, okay?
So you saw Jesus and saw red and like just started flipping tables. Yeah, going here.
Pretty much.
I was joking.
No, you are joking. So literally that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the fact that in a situation like that, I think for so many of us, we can't. Like there's no, like you just can't. Like the violation of the social norm and the community, like I would have literally embarrassed my dad, like in a way that he might never recover from. Like there would forever be that story of the time your son couldn't sit through the like one prayer. like why? Like just it would, and I realized that for like that's a lot of it for like so many people. Like it's not so much the jerks in your life, right? It's not, a lot of us don't socialize with Kent Hovens or Ken Hams or these weirdos and jerks on the internet who, to like some extent pass themselves off as socially acceptable human beings, but most of us see through pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think the real...
I mean, and again, go ahead. Most Christians don't like those assholes. Oh,
yes.
Sorry. Nobody likes a meme lord, right? You get up there and you're all debate bro, and Christians don't like people who act like that because they think that you're destroying their witness or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So, I mean, I do try to remind people like that these aren't like the YouTube Christians aren't normal people.
Yes. Yes. And I guess that's kind of what we're here to talk about is like and again it's not even an attack on them. It's just it was like a recognition that this is where the real resistance to secularity lies. It's not yes, like Christian nationalism and and like all the descriptors, the white evangelical fundamentalist, blah blah, yeah, all that's all a problem too. But again, a lot of us have a much easier time saying that's bad, and I'm not gonna go bowling with those people. But the sweet old church ladies in our lives, either literally from when we were in church or just in our families, in our community, the people that we have no desire or energy to challenge, people we have no smoke for, if you will. And again, they're not even a problem. A lot of us would say like they're kind of good to go with us a lot of times. I think I do think a lot of times their beliefs are at the core of maybe some problematic stances. Like they're not people I'm usually in a hurry to bring up like LGBTQ issues with, for instance, because I'm definitely afraid of what I might hear.
Sure.
Not always.
They're 60 plus. So, I mean, even with people who I find that people that old, I mean, because it didn't permeate the zeitgeist, when they were our age, it's one of those things that, I saw it on TV. That's all I know about it. And it was positive or negative.
Yeah. And I actually think too, I think a lot of people are of both minds. I think a lot of them are personally, explicitly pro-queer, especially because they just understand as like Black folk, like, yeah, we're just not going to pile on other marginalized groups. Right. But then I think if they started talking theology, there's some twisting and whatever. But my point is, for the most part, they're genuinely people we know and love. That's kind of how I wanted to situate this. That it's the sort of challenge of people you don't hate and people you don't actually demonize. And I realized that even in myself that I was like, wow, like I just don't have that. I don't have that energy for these people. yeah, which is like a really important social constraint, I think.
Oh my God. You're really bad. You know this. I tell you this every stream, probably. Just saying, you catch more flies with honey.
No, you do. I just it's and again, it's not it only sucks for me in the sense of like a sympathy. Like I felt bad that someone who I think so highly of is so genuinely consumed with something I couldn't think is further from the truth or sillier, right? And there is all of the like there's a heavy cost for, I think, true believers, like people who are like really sincere in their faith. And I think that's what I relate to. At least I relate to people who are hardcore. I relate to the people who are genuine Christians, and that's important to them. And they have heat for fake Christians, right? So people who feel that way and identify that way, I think a huge part of me, I think that why it resonates with me so much is it was about paying that cost. Like even to me, like if you were just the type of person who went to church once in a while and called yourself a Christian. Like, I
Mhm.
had a huge problem with that because I just thought that.
Well, like in church or just in the general?
Do you mean like I had a problem with that in church or just in general?
Well, I mean, because I don't know, me, I was the most Christiany as Christian I knew. And, but I could kind of separate, what happens in church versus people that I'm meeting out and about, right? I have, just being Black and woman, it's just interesting way to walk through the world, and especially in America, where it's just like, I need you to just get up off me, right? Just let me be who I want to be.
Yeah.
And so then by extension, I would allow people to do that. But what you won't do is come up in this house of God telling me how to get right with my daddy. It's like, so I was a little more like, if you're going to be talking the talk, you better be right.
Like I definitely hated it the most in church. Like people that tried to be churchy but weren't really about that life definitely upset me. But then I would say like in life outside of church, I could think you were cool, but I would still low key think you were faking the funk.
Okay, yeah,
if you weren't hardcore. Now what's weird is
Christians do that.
Yeah,
like, oh, you think that? They're judging you, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like if you're just like, you know what, that's between you and God. Like that's more where I was. And if other people weren't like that, even if I didn't agree with what the person was doing, I was still more likely to get on the person who was trying to dictate their beliefs onto others.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was that way too. And so I think that's why I kept the judgments kind of low key. Also, I don't know why, but I did the thing I think most Christians do, which is like all the things I didn't take seriously.
Oh, you had it. Okay.
That was because me and God were on the same page.
God understands, but I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't be having all y'all upset God.
Yeah.
He might be harder on me.
You don't all get the same pass. Yeah, it's
I hear that.
Crazy how that works.
I think that's actual normal Christian behavior.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about. It's not so much like, oh, I can't stand these people, they need to think like me. It's just more, no, these people are really serious about it, and in that sense, it makes me sad. And anytime you think that somebody's really hooked on something that you just don't think is good for them, or based in reality, it's not a great feeling. And then sort of again, the interest being just putting that forward, right? Like continuing, like personally, I think religion is a impediment to us in many ways, and that if we lived a more, in my estimation, a more honest,
Sure.
worldview, we'd kind of just.
You're gonna tell somebody, your grandma, that her whole life is a lie, and
what I'm getting at is I think that I can't. I don't know how to do that. That has to be, and I think this is what I've been getting at sort of overall with my approach to these things. This is just something that's really highlighted for me. Mm-hmm. It's why I think there has to be a normalization at a different level.
Okay.
And I hate to say this, but I used to put it on like the mass media. It's a cop out because it'll never happen. But hypothetically, imagine a conversation on Morning Joe or The View or something that just makes the link between, like, I don't know, Christian fascism or Christian nationalism or whatever, and hey, there's a lot of people talking about, is this stuff even true or whatever, right? Like it's never gonna happen, but just the way it would make it.
I think it will. There's been a really big rise in like people not identifying as Christian. I think there's going to be a point in time where they have to address it.
So that to me is huge, because I've always said I feel like that's like a fantasy for me, and I don't want to get myself excited.
I
I
don't
can't.
want you. Yeah, you're gonna start hyperventilating.
Yeah, I can't handle that thought. But the reason I think, because I hate to say it, but so much of the zeitgeist, like you were talking about, of what is okay to talk about and which positions are acceptable to even have, are sometimes outside of our control, right? And they're a lot of time dictated by a cultural meta. And at least in this country, at least for most people above a certain age, and I say that not really, I think it has anything to do with age, but more to do with how age correlates in this case with how you consume your news or how you consume conversation about what's going on in the world, such that if you're still hooked more into traditional mainstream media, like when I'm playing cable with, when I'm playing Pinochle with my dad and his friends, where I think of like as just regular folk, right? We don't have on Uncle Bobby, unfortunately. We do have on MSNBC because when we take a meal break, they like to perk up and hear the news for a while,
Yeah.
right? People do read the New York Times still and things like that. And we could go on with our critiques, but that doesn't change the numbers. So my point is just that makes it at least normal, because then maybe grandma is like, well, they was talking crazy on Morning Joe the other day about people not believing in God or something.
Yeah,
But
I think about it a lot just because I'm kind of concerned about how it will be covered, and what the backlash is going to be, because I don't want people thinking, oh, well, we have to, you know, ban abortion and ban, you know, books and all this other stuff, and like get people back towards Christianity, because it kind of seems like that kind of reactionary way that they're handling any kind of information right now.
yeah. So I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat. Yeah, so Suami said grandma needs to be confronted about the fact that her participation in a religion that has had systematic problems with child abuse and child sexual exploitation makes her complicit. Yeah, that's a conversation
I don't know that it's a
I
pinnacle.
can't have it. Sarah said Christ of Fashion is going to kill us, and
We got to be able
we
to
got
talk.
to be able to talk about it.
Sure. I mean, and again, there's time and place, right? I mean, it's your first time to the party. I think you got to establish relationships.
Oh yeah, no. It was yeah.
No. I'm not
Yeah, go
talking.
ahead.
I know that you.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
go ahead, go ahead.
based on how you handled it, I understand. I know that you clearly. I don't know. When you said that you were like, man, I start flipping tables. I was like, is he being?
Is he serious? Yeah.
Look, I can see you going either way.
Yeah.
But I think people need to remember that when you are trying to bring somebody out of a long-standing belief, you first have to put yourself on their side. They have to believe that you are one of them or on their side some kind of way. If you come at them just right out the gate, they're never going to listen to anything you have to say again. Like it doesn't matter what the topic is. There's a way to hold a conversation so that you're effective. And I know you, through trauma or fear or whatever's going on, politically or personally, that you may just want to start running around beating people up with a rubber rat. But I say all the time to like my employees, I'm like, there's what you want and there's a way to get it. That's a very narrow path. And everything else is not that. Everything else is you not getting what you want. Everything else is you working against your own interest. So, I mean, there's a lot of times when, I want to look somebody in the eye and be like, I know you were lying to me. Just say you're a lying liar who lies a lie. Like you are insulting my intelligence, sir. But, if I need to expose somebody, I got to get them talking in circles so that they're tripping up. And then I'm like, wait. How could this and this be true? And then, you either get the confession or you get the person storming out and quitting, or there's an art to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to talking to people. So, guys, gals, non-binary pals, I hear you. I want it to. Part of me is like, I would love a world where people just think rationally. And like another part of me is like, I don't care what you think as long as it doesn't affect me. So like I've long given up wishing that people were not idiots. Like it just doesn't seem like something tangible. And then if it's like, all right, well, if you have to be an idiot, can you just be an idiot in your house? Like, can you not walk outside and be an idiot in spaces that affect me? And so, depending on what that idiocy is, it's going to look a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And to some extent, I see, even when I see that idiocy as profoundly unhelpful or harmful, I still understand that it's human, and and so then we do have to make all of these considerations about what's actually pragmatic. But I guess, like, for me, what's so interesting is just the clash between a sincerely held belief and the willingness to share it. And to some extent, the sort of asymmetry we experience with believers, in the sense that we tend to have, to the extent that our beliefs are strongly held too, we do typically feel like they've been subjected to quite a lot of scrutiny or rational investigation and evidentiary basis and all of that. And then they out here on a whim and a miracle. but like the socially acceptable, what I would call collective delusion versus the more rigorous truth held by a group with much less influence and sort of power. And it's just interesting. So Tsunami said you're the good cop and she's the bad cop. I thought of it as a little bit. I think of it as we're trying to shift the Overton window, and the reason I say that is because I think Tsunami would always be herself and tell people exactly what she thinks. I think PC's probably the same way. But the goal is to make it a conversation. You don't have to.
Right. I think Crystal's more like me. I've seen her. We had to tag team somebody. I know you know what I'm talking about once, and we were coming at the person from the same perspective, where it's just like, okay, let's pretend this is a rational human being and reason with them before they actually go out there and hurt somebody. And then at the point that they're like, no, how dare you think I'm a reasonable human being? And we were just like, well, screw it then. We'll treat you like you're not.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, we know who Tsunami is.
So part of what I was thinking is like, I'm pretty out there, right? And with this group, you could get me out there. So like, if my dad spoke up one day for some reason and decided to, somebody said something religious and he decides to tell everybody in the room for some reason that I don't believe that stuff, or I'm not religious or whatever, I could take it from there, being put on the spot. But obviously I'd resent him for doing that. I would, that wouldn't. I can't imagine why a father would do that to their son, especially not given what we both know about the audience and the group of people that we're with, right? Which is sort of how I think of it normally. Like, I think my dad sees that in me. I think he sees that. He knows personally I strongly disagree with these people, but I'm not to the point of trying to cause social disharmony with the people in our lives, and I can tolerate sort of
I think that
the everyday religiosity.
When you had the conversation with Dr. Bob, I think it was a great example of like how, you could take either stance, you know. I think a lot of us were there and saw you on the show before where you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. But like when you had to sit down and like, you know, get through it, it was just like, you know, again, for the community, there's a stance you have to take and a way it has to be presented. And then, you know, if they're not willing to, you know, act like adults or rational people, you let them go. But for the thing last night, it's just like, these people are like twice your age, which means that they're not inclined to listen to you anyway. There's a lot of influence that you're going to have to be like, you're going to like really have to get into their good graces before they're willing to listen to you on anything. And then we have to talk about how difficult it is to get through the neuroplasticity.
Sort of like the lack of neuroplasticity, like but like cognitive, more like I mean,
you've been thinking this one way your entire life. These connections are well, like, I mean, they may as well be wired in, like with like in stone.
Yes,
it is just so difficult. Like, I don't know if you remember like the Matrix. Well, if you remember the Matrix, who doesn't remember the Matrix? But like there was something outside of it, and it came from like, I guess there was like comic books or something that accompanied it. In like one of the comic books, people were talking about like when they were talking about the movies and like the whole thing. It's like you have to be like so old to be able to get into the Matrix. There's a reason nobody was like over 30 when they were called to join, because if you, I want to say it was 30, but like if you're over that, you were considered to be too old. Like your mind couldn't handle the truth, and you would, I don't know, go crazy or melt or something. But it, I mean, it's kind of like that, where you're like trying to get through to somebody at that age. It's just, there's a point at which their mind isn't going to let them go past. And I'm not saying that old people can't deconvert, but it's an uphill battle, especially when you're talking about people 20s and 30s.
Yeah. So I've been trying to mostly stay on the bright side of things, but there is I think something you're getting into, there's a bit of a darker side to all of this, which is, and it's the reason I titled it like Nice Old Ladies, because there's a way in which, first off, that in our sort of daily normal experience of life, these are some of the people that are like actually the staples of community, like people that can literally hook up a house full of people and do all the things and the events, and it all comes together and it's fabulous, and everything just works, and there's, you know, like that's crazy. Like, think about how hard it is to get two friends together for coffee, right? And they get you know, the whole neighborhood together for family dinner, and there's enough of everything for everyone. They just have it all. I mean, it's kind of amazing. But then there's this other side to where, because at one point you talked about the sort of the lack of the mental flexibility that comes with age, but there's also a thing that comes with the identity, which is a lot of these personalities. I don't know how else to put it, and I can only describe it because I used to be this way to an extent. I was kind of a religious bully, right? Like the idea was, because my particular way of being a jerk was hidden behind my Christianity, it was okay. So like I went to a Catholic school. So an example is like I went to Catholic school. I was one of the leaders in band, and I just took it upon myself to be like you don't play on that stage with us until we pray, right? And so I like made everyone do the before band concert prayer thing, right?
All right.
Now, when I look back at it, it's like just super cringy and like why and like just totally unnecessary. But you get away with it because you're at a Catholic school, so they're not going to chastise you for being in a leadership position and using it to
that,
prayer.
If they go against you, it's going against God, and they really don't want y'all to get the smackdown. So.
Yeah. And so a lot of those things are seen as like, oh, you're like such a good, devout person, right? And I see.
Not like an a-hole at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I got that that's how my family is. My family's like obnoxiously Christian and just assumes the rest of the world is happy to go along with it. So that's like what I knew. But now, but to your point about these people, a lot of it's not just you've thought this way your whole life. You made that your identity, and the way other people see you is largely wrapped up in that. And you do kind of get away with a lot of doing things your way and everybody going along with it. And a large part of that is the reputation that these people have because of the positive influence that they've been in people's lives and in the community, right? And I think that needs to be thought more about because it's much harder. Like I was sitting there like thinking, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm as anti-theist as they get. I hate everything about situations like this. But even me, I can't bring myself to actually resist it. And I wouldn't expect anybody else to, because I think that's like an unreasonable, because that's what I was realizing, right? That's an unreasonable social expectation, right? You can't expect a person to go into a situation, and, voice their objection to, religious ceremony or observances and things like that. But it does also create the impression that we're all aligned and we all think this is great and we all love Jesus. So it's just more challenge. It's like you got to put your big kid pants on.
Yeah. If that's the battle you're intent on fighting.
No, you're just not. Yeah, you're just like, I'm not even. Those people are the least of my concerns. So for me, they're the least of my concerns, like in terms of who's a problem. They're not my concern at all in terms of.
No, and that's me. I'm all about strategy. It's like I got a whole like country to try to change right now. Who is already voting with me? Okay, like. I'm not touching it. I'm not, unless you are touching people that you shouldn't be touching. Like, I'm not.
Sure.
Not, the whole, like this whole thing where the left eats its own and like the, the purity test. And I'm just like, I need y'all to stop. I need y'all to calm down. We are fighting actual fascism here. We kind of need to be on the same page. And I don't know, like the one thing I say when people are like, well, don't we need the right to kind of balance the left? And I'm like, no, the left eats its own. We do a great job of that.
Sure.
Like what we don't do a great job is organizing. I kind of got to be on that stuff right now. So if some old ladies want to play pinochle and talk about Jesus, like I don't see it like I honestly don't see it any different than a bunch of 12-year-olds getting together and playing Super Mario Brothers while talking about Harry Potter. Like, I don't care. I'm sorry. I don't mean to like mess up your whole thing here.
No, it's fine.
But like, I don't know.
So the reason it concerns me is two things. So one is the truth. I'm just I'm disproportionately concerned about like it's like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it makes you a scientist. It's a curse because you really are a scientist. Like it's not just a job for me. It's like how I think about the world. I'm like, you don't have evidence.
You're very smart, Jay. Everybody agrees.
No, it's not even that. It's literally it's almost seriously, it's like a curse. It's like a problem where
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
can't even just go along with whatever is socially acceptable because if there's
Yeah,
no
you're
evidence for it, you're like,
analyzing everything to death. Yeah.
yeah.
Been there.
And then so then there's two things. One is like one is like my whole thing of like black people deserve the truth. And I had this conversation with my dad that I kind of think really brought it into focus for me. Like he said, for black folks, especially for black people who get an education, it's always tied to our freedom. You couldn't just get an education just because you had to. And for most people, that was about like physical autonomy, like get yourself out of condemned circumstances and put yourself in a position where you can make your own choices, right? So that was like get out of poverty, right? Like and he said that most people never considered freedom from religion. And I'm very much of the persuasion that like until you have that critique of religion, you can't really have freedom, especially not to me in the context of Black Christianity, which to me, its history is rooted in this is the religion that your slave masters gave us, right? It may not be that to people now, but
I really
that's
don't understand why more people don't see it that way.
Because they just they just can't. You're not allowed
Right.
to.
Right.
But I think once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right. But there are a lot of like what do you call it? Like the BHI and the Nation of Islam, and they're talking about that all the time. Like, why are you under the white man's religion? You need to free yourself. Da, 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 da. Now they look like lunatics, by rights. But
yeah,
I mean,
maybe that's part of it.
I'm thinking that, but I'm like, it's not. I don't know why that part isn't like ingrained more in us though, because like you, I don't know, especially if you're in a big city, you do hear it a lot.
See, I'm thinking, and I think that's why we're having this conversation. I think a lot of that is back to the influence of these women. Like,
right?
No, because the role, the thing is, and it's a Black thing, but it's not. It's Black in the sense that I think these things are just
people don't go around asking why they're like praying to white Jesus.
No. I just mean in the terms of the centrality of these sort of people, typically older people, typically women that have really, really great reputations and are the like anchor point of your entire family or community, who then from there are doing the reputation laundering for Christianity. I think that happens in all communities, right? Okay. It's just maybe a little bit ratcheted up because of the central role that those type of women play in particular communities in general, right? So like there's just more of a Black women are the matriarchal head of the family vibes.
Yeah.
And
a few reasons, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's right. And most of those reasons are, I think, great. It's just that because of that, you don't challenge grandma's religion. Nobody does. You don't. Like that is you don't go there. Grandma loves her Jesus, and you just don't go there. But because you just don't go there, I think that's why that conversation about the history of the religion doesn't happen. I think part of it is because you don't challenge grandma's religion, and the other part of it is it's typically said by people who we're going to dismiss because they're Muslims or they're Black Hebrew Israelites, right? So we dismiss those people out of hand, and then they're saying this thing, and now we don't have to listen to it because only the Nation of Islam is saying that.
Now, I mean, I don't know. I do think about this infrequently because we hear them both in tandem. Why are you worshiping a white Jesus? Why are you worshiping the white man's God? So we will run out and buy a picture of Black Jesus, but we won't question why we're worshiping that God. Because I mean, Christianity is huge in Africa, but I think that when most Americans think about like Africans, they're thinking of like voodoo and I don't know, just kind of weird like blood magic ritual things. Like I don't know. I don't think they think that I don't know that it's common knowledge that one of the major religions in Africa is Christianity. Well, I know it isn't because I've seen a lot of usually older Black men, and when they're like, well, what was the best part of being brought to America, and they're like, well, worshiping the right God. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's a crazy thing to hear.
Did we really need
The
that
crazy thing to hear. So here's what I've realized is I feel like there's this thing where I don't feel like those of us that have turned away from the religion have found a way yet to remain anchored to the core of our family identity. I think we're pushed kind of to the margins, and that's that's one part of the problem. Because for me, it becomes what happens is my mom is still far more influential in my family than I am, and I don't see that ever changing. And then it's my grandparents, and so now the next generation, where you would hope that what I'm trying to do is break the curse. Like, can we just not continue to build our whole identity on this very untrue thing? It's like that fight's actually being lost. And my younger cousins and now even their kids are largely like converting and singing in the choir and putting their baptisms all over social media. Really? Yeah, and it feels like it.
So what's are we talking about under like teens or 20s or?
It just kind of depends. So for instance, like I don't think OG Roddy is very religious, but I think as a father, I think if his kids like are doing the Jesus thing, like he's good with that because they're trying to be good kids.
Well, I mean, because when you look at like the 20 and 30 somethings, like they're largely, even in the Black, let's say largely across Americans, but in the Black community, we're still pretty tight. But I mean, we are seeing Black youth claim Christianity in name only, rather than these big grand gestures. Like
so, what I see is I always think it's kind of like that, and then I realize over time it's like more serious than because I think it starts that way, and then I think the thing is like the choir thing, which you're like, cool, everybody in our family's musical, go ahead, get your music on, cuz. But that leads to more serious engagement and investment in the faith, or same thing with like.
I was asking like what the cohort was.
Yeah, I think it's my age and even down into the 30s and 20s. And the thing that scares me is even the ones who get more educated too. So that that's because again, there's just no secular influence or real
and that's
anything in their life.
Like, if we're talking about teens and even early 20s, it would make sense because that's where their friends are. That's where people hang, and this is where my community is. And I think people will do the rituals of their community, in which it could be smoking and drinking. It could be baptizing and worshiping, the God, whatever.
It's funny how my opinion on which one of those is the better option has changed throughout my life.
But usually by 30, and that's what I was asking, because usually by 30, people, they're like, well, I don't I don't need this. So you're seeing a little bit more of like, I say who they truly are. And it again after retirement, I think it is, you start to see them become more religious. But again, that's again where the community is, because they're bored and they're lonely, and you know, it's like, well, when in doubt, God.
Right.
But usually, and I think this is again across Americans. I can't really talk about the Black community per se, but and again, your family, everybody's family is different, so it might be maybe different for yours than some others, especially since your grandparents are so
Yeah,
hardcore.
my family is definitely on the hyper religious end of the spectrum. Yeah. Um yeah, no, this was more, this wasn't, to be honest, this wasn't a situation that caused me any sort of personal distress or
Cool.
feeling like I needed to do anything differently. It was just an opportunity to reflect
Hmm.
and say, I think in many ways, I've allowed myself to underestimate the challenge, right?
Yeah,
And
I've
it,
been
and it
saying that.
yeah, and it feels very easy to get caught up in, oh, these people are wrong, or these people don't have his evidence, and all these apologists are dumb, and most of them are fascists, so you really shouldn't talk to them anyway. Um, but to realize, no, the thing that's keeping Christianity in so many people's lives is these relationships. And
Yes.
a lot of times these relationships are not with antisocial psychopaths. They're literally people's grandmas and aunties. And I, in my head, what comes to mind is typically the sweet old ladies in a church, because that's what I grew up on. I grew up on like the missionary choir. There was
Hmm.
like grandma and all her friends, and they were the foundation of that church. They were the ones who knew
Yeah.
everybody and knew everybody's kids and what everybody's talents were and all of that stuff that a lot of people might not pay attention to, but really were the details of people's lives that allowed them to be the fabric of the community. When you thought of that church, you thought of those ladies. When you thought of the good feelings you got on Sunday, it was being around them, singing with them, having them feed you before and after church, and sometimes during. And
Boy thing. As a girl, those judgmental bitches.
really.
Hate, oh my God. I used to hate church women. I had to tell myself all the time, I'm here for God. I'm here for God. And sometimes God's people are people everywhere, and sometimes people get a little headstrong, and you just keep it moving, and you're here for God. I God, I can't stand church women.
I think that's a really interesting thing to go back and revisit. And I would love to hear what more people think about that. Like the sex difference in how boys are treated by
Oh
those
yeah.
women versus
Hmm.
girls.
Yeah,
And
there's
also
different.
I got the best of it too, because I was, one of the preacher's grandkids and
Oh
all
right.
that whole
Yeah.
deal. But a lot of positive memory and association. I do recognize the judginess too. As I got older, definitely the judginess. They were definitely the people who you were, trying to maintain a certain image in front of and
Hmm.
things like that. And I can only imagine how much more that's the case for non-men. Um,
Yeah, I mean, my experience is just like nothing was ever good enough for them. There's just this stereotype in their head of what a proper young lady is, and I just wasn't it. And I it was just constantly them, like my mom, like in my mom's ear, and side eye, and oh my God, I yeah.
you would have loved probably this one paper I wrote in grad school. It was called coming to church naked, I think, or something like that, showing up to church naked. And there was this picture I showed as this example of this, and you could see that the older women were dressed in such a way, usually hat on, but everything is long, right? The dress is
Mhm.
long down past the ankles, the sleeves are long typically, right? And then what I meant when I say coming to church naked is actually just a young woman who has on like a very conservative outfit, but maybe it's sleeveless, right?
Mhm.
So she's showing her shoulders, and then
Oh,
maybe her
no, you
dress,
can't do that.
yeah, and her dress just comes down like little above the knee. And I literally was telling because I was, most of my classmates are white. I'll be telling them like the old ladies will be talking about this young lady and literally saying things like she practically coming to church naked, and
Yes,
we would think
yes.
she just showed a little shoulder. But that's part of
No,
this
you would think
clash. Yeah.
no, you would think that she was servicing all the men in the
Yeah.
back pew. Like, they are relentless.
Oh my goodness. There was another thing that reminded me of that recently, actually, I saw where there was a teen choir that went viral because when they were doing, I don't know if people know, but like in black churches, the choir marches in. Like they don't just start the service just up there in the choir pew. They march in to the choir stand. And so this was a teen choir, and so they had kind of turned their march in to like a little dance line, when they all did little dances and stuff when they was coming in, but they was singing and having a good time, and it went viral. And then people were like dogging them for cornrows and short sleeves and all this type of stuff. And you'll be like, this is crazy. These kids are literally in church on Sunday. They are the choir.
Yeah, yeah.
But like you said, it's never good enough. It's just
Never. Yeah. I mean, it's like they have to find, it's like they get paid to find something wrong. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember ever finding God in a church lady. I mean, and that's not to say I didn't have friends. I mean, they were like the younger ones, the ones that were my age, that were single, that were just, I'm just trying to find my way in the world. Yeah, yeah.
PC said it's a fine line. You got to be cute, but not too cute.
Oh yeah, don't be homely. They'll tell you about yourself.
Yes.
You be walking up in here looking just any kind of way for God. You in the Lord's home, you little hussy. It's just.
I can't imagine. That's just torture.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I just quickly, if I can't easily fit in, I'm going to lash out. I'm going to color all outside the box. If you're going to hate me, I'm going to earn it like that. And I've always been like that. But it's just like when I was trying, I didn't even, I mean, for me in my head, it's just like when I was trying, I felt like one, nothing was ever good enough. And two, there's no like acknowledgement of, I see you, but, and here's how, like, just, tweak it a little bit. It's just always like the cut, the digs, the cuts, the, this is bad and this is bad. Just never, I never felt like the lifting up. And again, when I'm talking about like church ladies, I'm talking about like kind of like the people that you're talking about that were like more the established ones, the ones that were like running the bake sales or
yeah.
I'm like not just like every
person in the church. Yeah.
Anyone that identified as female or walked through. Like, no, I'm not saying that at all. But the ones that live for church, like where like that was definitely a part of their identity.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I am a church lady.
Yes.
Go on somewhere with that.
And to be honest, looking back at it, right, that's the closest a lot of them ever get to any real authority or status or influence. And yeah, it's definitely wielded to keep people in line. So this is all what I've been thinking about, right? Just that's a tough sell for most people, and it's about what's keeping you in line, so to speak, is far more than just beliefs or lack thereof. It's really like, no, you don't want to be ostracized from your community, so you don't step out of line. And then what happens in effect is, and this is what I think happens then for most people, is they associate Christianity with those positive influences and friends and loved ones, which does have the effect of making it still seem like a great idea for the rest of us. And I think that that's actually what allows people then to overlook the abuses and the problems, and maybe just even the fact that it's all quite phantasmical and ridiculous, is because those bad examples or those crazy stories aren't the real Christians. The real Christians are these sweet, loving, great people. And that's always and that kind of is what, I would sort of feel as this sort of unfairness, but sort of to Sumami's point about being bad cop, is that's what would make you feel like you have to go against that. Like when someone uses a positive reputation or community building and all of this stuff sort of as their weapon of choice, then those are the things you have to undermine, because that's where they're getting their power from. And I'm sort of realizing just how tough that is, because of the power structure in those relationships.
Because I know priests and pastors get a lot of flack, as they should, but a lot of the abuses that are garnered in church is just, comes from the cliquishness of it. You don't even have to necessarily be a pastor or a deacon or whatever. You could just be in with the right clique. And then, it makes anybody outside of that clique subject to being prey.
Yeah, that is really, really true. And I've always kind of had a different experience, because one, coming from a minister's family, you're treated differently in that particular church. But then every other church I've been part of like the worship team or playing drums or doing sound. And so you're kind of part of the in group, if that makes sense, by nature of the fact that you're on the platform, so to speak. But yeah, you're right there, and that is a difference too in like who's integrated and feels great all the time when they're around here versus who is terrified all week thinking about just the eyes and the looks they're gonna get on Sunday morning.
But it's also kind of like a little bit of a head trip, because you'll feel bad, like you don't want to go there, but you'll assume it's you being convicted. God's judging you. That there's, and I don't want to put my feelings onto everybody else, but it's just like when the church puts so much pressure on, this is where you're supposed to be. It is commanded. It takes more to not be there, to not be subject to, or to want to push away from any kind of abuse, and if you're underage, those might not be options at all. So I don't want to say,
all right. So the Apostate Sisters, one of the things about said, I feel like I saw that generation of church ladies raise a generation of subservient boys into quote unquote godly men. Although they added they were in churches that were 95% white for context, but same thing. I think
I think people are people everywhere, and that's just kind of what I was trying to get my mind around. And I'm like, I don't think it's. I know there's a lot of anti-theists here, and I'm saying this because we're talking about churches and calling out churches. It's by no means just church. I could have said the same thing about high school.
Sure.
A lot of the places that I read about that get sued, like a lot of the workplaces that have been sued for sexual harassment, or places like this. It's I think you have to be very cognizant of the type of environment that you're in, be vocal, and know your worth. Don't put up with things like that. And I feel like I'm preaching to a choir, to people who would never put themselves into this position. But I want you to be able to walk away with, it's not just church. I really do, because like these toxic, usually when I see them, they're sexist. but again, they don't have to be. Like, there's a lot of boys clubs out there where, like my daughter is at a job, and for her to get a promotion, she had to ingratiate herself to all the other directors, because when, like, just the way that the promotion system is set up, they have to vote on who's going to get this, like, this position. And if they don't know who you are, they don't have anything to judge. Like, it's like, well, can their work stand for them? Like, this is kind of silly. No, they have to know you and like you, because if I like you enough, I'll deem you worthy of being in this position. Is just the most insane system of promotion that I've ever heard of. But like, it exists right now today, and people are doing this. And which is, again, it puts you into this clique, and you have to act a certain way, and you have to look a certain way, and you have to put up with a moderate level of BS from the higher ups, because they know they can. And it's like this kind of hazing, because you want to make more money, don't you? I think that we need to
yeah, it's very human. I've been thinking a lot about this just from an evolutionary perspective, and we're just not wired, most of us, to go against people in positions of status and power, and that's what religion preys upon, and it affects us in almost every area of our life. I was like, academia is like this. Junior faculty are usually more active and more recently trained, but all the decisions get made by senior faculty, and so it's
oh my God, education is like notorious
kind of an issue.
For this.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem. But it's just because everywhere's like, it's just the way people are, and most of these structures in society are then run by this happening at some level, so yeah, it's just, the reason it's so interesting to me is, one, I think this comment about them raising subservient boys, that and it's a quote unquote godly men, that's a lot of what I see. So especially with Black men, is even ones who I think are not religious or only mildly religious, like the type of religious who, like, I'm not going to impose it on everyone, everything. When those type of things happen, they're like, mum's the word, because they're flashed right back to, I'm not about to get my butt whipped because I didn't get up in time for Sunday school or whatever. Like that trauma of literally being whipped into often cases like that. Yeah. And then I see this even where, like, I don't think my dad's that religious, but I think he goes along with it largely because I think it's a unconscious demand of so many Black women, including women like my mom. So I know it was the case with her, and definitely some of the other women, because, it's like, me and my dad never going to do certain things. We're never going to say grace. We're probably never going to really talk about God. And all of a sudden his women come around, and all of a sudden he's saying great. And I'm like, look at you. but I think that's, what the Apostate Sisters were saying. I think that's largely it. And so it's very interesting, because we don't typically think of those Black women as having a ton of power. My grandmother was not someone who was seen as you would think of as a powerful person in society, but her influence on the family and the household and in the church was
massive. But and actually, I was just about to say that too, because like, when you're talking about like the people in these churches, they're usually, you don't get this like TD Jakes figure where they're making moves on local, state levels, but like, or even hobnobbing with celebrities. I mean, this isn't most of your little of your Black pastors, when we're talking about people who do these in Black churches. A lot of it is coming out of the system of oppression, where they want to feel like they have like something, like like for once in their life, after like a whole life of being, you know, beaten down, you know, especially as like women in the Black community. I you know, I know Black men hate hearing this, especially the Kevin Samuels types, but we really do hold it together. We get no love for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
And then so when it's just like, I'm finally getting seen, I'm finally getting like some recognition for something
yeah,
I'm doing,
yeah,
it's in the church.
yeah,
And I, you know,
yeah,
I'm not, part of me can relate, like where it's just like, oh my God, like finally some goddamn recognition. And
yeah.
other part of me is just like, well, you should know how this feels to do to other people. And like,
Mm,
you know, church lady, like maybe you shouldn't be doing this, but like it, again, people are people. And
yeah,
I just don't think that
yeah, and that's
they're gonna
and
hide behind their godly, their righteous indignation. It's not gonna be like,
yeah, and that's why to some extent I put it on women. It's first off, I think this is something that anybody in our lives can do. If they have a positive reputation and then they use that on behalf of whatever group or organization they're a part of, you know, it could be the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, whatever it is, like this dynamic exists. But, you know, traditionally, especially in Black communities, women have played that relational role and as a strength. Like that's an
yeah,
amazing thing. That's how we made it this far. We wouldn't have survived without it. And now we're just thinking through this really weird time we're in, and like what to do with it. And so and I want to express something that's new. So AR said using the Lord to score points with the ladies. Yes, AR, but it's complicated. And the reason I say it's complicated is because poverty and racism amplify the community ills across the board.
yeah,
And
100%.
so what happens then for a lot of women, it's hard to find a good man. Good man hard to find. And
Yeah.
so
I mean, you know, what with the KKK or the, what do you call it, the slave patrol locking them up, like left, right, sideways.
yeah, seriously. So the church kind of became a shortcut to finding a good man, right? It goes back to what the apostate sisters were saying about raising subservient boys. At least they were controllable. At least they were well behaved, right? And so, like, there's an image in my dad's house. It's the thing I hate the most. It has no other decorations that bother me, but this one, it's like a Bible with a gun sitting on top of it, like a handgun, and it says, "The choice is yours." And this is how I think so many Black people think, that like you can either go the godly route or your life is going to end up in like gangs and crime in the streets and dead or in jail. Come on, it's either like the church or dead or in jail. That's what this image is saying to me, right? And obviously that's a huge problem for me as a non-believer, because I should have a choice that's not God and also not the gun, right? Which is like my life, because I literally have neither. But that is the mentality, and I think that picture captures it for so many Black folk, right? And so it's like, if you don't want you a thug and you want you a good godly man that's not going to be running the streets, you should find them in church. And then men are then taught the same thing, that if you want to settle down with somebody that's actually wife material and all these other misogynistic stereotypes, you find her in the church. And so it like reinforces each other. And that's why I said it's complicated, because it's not necessarily, it is in a sense like going along with religion because you don't want to be alone, but it's also real. Like, I have to think about that. Like, for most Black men and Black women, your primary dating pool is other Black men and Black women. So you as a Black man, like, evolutionary, you can't just say, I don't care what black women want, this is who I am. Because yeah, you just won't have one, you know? It's really crazy because I realized that, like, I don't know that my dad would be likely to find a, you know, well-educated, like, compatible black woman that's not a Christian. I just don't think the demographics are on his side. If that's the
yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think we talked about this before, where it's just like, okay, you get Christian, you know, to a lesser extent, like Muslim or something, like trying to like even like in someone who is like even I would say agnostic, but like just like, yeah, I believe in God, but I don't really, F with him like that. Like at 60, I just, I mean, I'm thinking about like the women in my family who were not religious at all, didn't go to church, but I mean, if she knew that if any of my aunts or like their cousins knew that you didn't love Jesus, like what kind of man even are you?
Yeah, you're undateable. You're absolutely undateable. Yeah. That was a tough thing for me to realize about, like, even black women like my mother, like that, like my mother would never date someone like me. I know that that's not supposed to traumatize you because you're not supposed to want to date your mother, but it's traumatizing because I always say your mother is supposed to want to recommend you. She's supposed to feel like she raised a good man who, if somebody said, "Oh, I have a single daughter around your son's age," she'd be like, "Oh, my son is the bee's knees," right? Yeah. But instead, my mom would be like, "My son is amazing, but he's kind of godless. Yeah, I can't really 0 out of 10 would not recommend." Wow. Now, I don't think she actually feels that way about me, but I do think there's that conflicted nature because for her, that was always like first and foremost, right? Yeah. Like her husband had to have a serious relationship with the Lord, and she thinks most of the relationships she's had that have not worked out is because the guy was not serious enough about his relationship with the Lord, which I'm like, that just says about compatibility with you. Like, it is what it is.
She's married now, so
yeah, she found what she was looking for. Yeah, she found what definitely found what she was looking for.
That's I think that most of us after a breakup, we try to do some internal soul searching and, how can I, be a better person for the next person. It's just like, nah, he just didn't love God enough for me. Oh, he didn't love God enough, so he wasn't good enough for me. Like, if he loved God enough, he would have been good enough for me.
But yeah, because a lot of that is right. It's wrapped up in the idea of God has an actual person in mind for you. And so if it wasn't that person, then that's kind of on you for not having found the one that God meant for you. All so difficult to keep track of. But it really does become tough, and it becomes a thing that we can't operate outside of. So these are all the things that are the issues that come with this sort of just the culture of it all, right? It's the culture. It's the way Christianity has infused itself into our culture. Mm-hmm. That is probably a bigger challenge than just the ideas. And I don't know what it takes to change that, or if I don't know. It's weird. So I feel like part of my frustration is I feel like white people are trying to colonize atheism. Like, y'all gave us Christianity, and now some of y'all have realized Christianity is stupid and it's not true. And so you've left it alone, but you didn't bother to go back and say, hey, we kind of like colonize a lot of the world with this stuff, and those people still seem to believe this. So maybe we should deal with that. And so it feels like a new thing where, like, atheism to me represents an intellectual step forward, and largely our communities have been excluded from that. So that bothers me, but again, it feels more like there's going to be this like mainstream thing that has to happen and get worked out so that it's even normal to have the conversation, and then maybe some more progressive Black people will start to say, hey, this is an issue.
I mean, it's going to take
uphill battle.
It is, and I think even more so for the Black community, which is still, well, I mean, communities of color in the United States, just because it's not, I say it's kind of a poor thing, right? We tend to cling very heavily to external things to feel internally comfortable. So whether it be God or lottery tickets or, whatever, we're always looking for hope. Say we, the marginalized groups are always reaching out for something to hope for, and God kind of fits into that hope box. So it's, I don't know. It's a lot of work that needs to be done on so many fronts.
Yeah. So I'm actually super glad we did this, because I felt like I don't talk often about Christianity in a way that I have much else but piss and vinegar for it. And this is like one of those times of like, nope, I think the bigger problem is actually the people we genuinely know and love and care about. And there's a big problem there, because even somebody as motivated to oppose Christianity as I am, I can't do it in those situations, and I wouldn't ask other people to do it. And y'all know I'm the person who's like, you need to talk to your family, you need to have this conversation. Like I'm that guy, but in those situations, I'm still like, yeah, I can't. I wouldn't do it either.
I can't. Yeah, and I'm like, I couldn't even count on both hands how many times I've been in the side chat. Like, Jay, we live in a society. You can't just do that to people.
Yeah, and it is.
But I love this about you. I'm so glad you talked and shared your experience, because like I feel like this is growth, personal growth for you.
It is growth, and it's weird too. Like I hate to say it, but I know my poor mom probably feels so like that's so unfair, because everybody else in my life gets to be religious. My girlfriend's religious, but what about? I do feel like there's certain.
I was throwing shade at you the other week too.
There's certain relationships, like we have different circles of intimacy. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't think I could have a partner that's a person of faith, but they certainly have to know how I feel about it. If you can tolerate that level of smoke and animosity for your worldview and still be okay with it, then okay, I guess that's possible. And if you're my parent, then I feel like in order for us to have the type of relationship I want us to have as adults, which is different than the one we had as children, you have to know and understand me. And I feel like you should want to create a certain type of environment. I feel like a parent should not want to create an environment for me where I'm uncomfortable in your home or something like that, because I'm your child, right? Now, when we out in the community and we're talking about friends of the family or more extended family, right? These circles, they're different. We have different expectations based on the level of intimacy we have in a particular relationship, I think.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Just so interesting with the younger generation. They're like, I'm me all the time. And I'm like, I don't know. I was raised where like you bring a different version of you depending on the situation. I'm not the same me to you that I am to you, that I am to my boss, or that I was to my teachers, or when I'm meeting a stranger in public. But and it's been really interesting trying to integrate 20-somethings into the workforce. But like, no, there's a professional you. I know it's in there. You can do it, I swear. But also in these situations too, where it's like, you can still hate religious institutions and not say it through a game of pinochle.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely. Yeah, time and place.
And maybe you can. I'm not saying never, like it's completely off the table. But and there's somebody in the thing earlier where it's just like, if you're going to ask me, and I'm like, I'm not saying never ever be yourself. If it comes up, I'm not saying to lie. But before you walk in there, like, yeah, my name's Jay. I'm an anti-theist. You want to know what that means? Like,
Yeah,
maybe that's not how
yeah.
you introduce yourself. So I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm definitely with you on that. And I'm not a person who thinks, I've tried to create a space for it so that this is the time and place for it, and if people come here, then that's fine. And if we have, opportunities out in the protest or whatever we're doing, like that's,
Yeah.
those we can create the time and space for it. But yeah, certainly, it's understandable that people don't do that when they're in normal social situations. And I think that is what I would love to see our community become more aware of. So part of my case that I'm trying to get people to understand is that atheists are marginalized people. And this to me is an example of that, where most of us don't feel comfortable sharing our lack of belief in many social situations because we fear the consequences of doing so.
Mhm.
And again, that's why I wouldn't ask people to do it, because it goes against your human instinct to be accepted and part of your surrounding and part of your social group. But hopefully that at least raises our awareness of like, oh yeah, what, like that's not great. Like that's not great. And if I decide to support atheists in those spaces where it's appropriate, and support those organizations and support those content creators or whatever you want to do, hopefully this is part of it. Because I do think that part of what we do here at Black Freethinkers that I think is really great. One is obviously we get to talk to people that are not Black freethinkers about what it's like to be a Black freethinker, and that's pretty awesome. But hopefully it's to share enough that perspective that it rubs off, so that people sort of go, hey, I'm not Black, but I am the free thinker part. And, you guys help me think through some of the challenges of living as a free thinker, that it might be harder to be aware of if you're not used to being marginalized. If that's not a feeling you're used to, welcome to the club, right? And sometimes it's like you don't even recognize your own, right? Like so many people, like the fact that you are sensitive or careful to talk about this around family members because you don't know how they would treat you afterwards. That's a sign that something's a bit off. If you're, shouldn't share something at work because you might never get promoted if people knew, that's a sign that something's off, right? And so hopefully that is motivating to people. I guess that's kind of the thing we hope for.
Yeah. I mean, and again, my thing isn't like, I'm all about like people being vocal and finding their voice and being able to come out to people. My only thing is like there's, where it's time and place where you are carefully laying the foundations to be able to present the news. Not that, you should ever like hide or be ashamed of yourself, but a lot of times these are things that we will do, just intrinsically, people may not know. Most people probably don't know like your, favorite thing to do in bed, or,
Right.
something like that, because like that's a personal thing. And it's just really like a mind thing. We understand that that's something we shouldn't say here. And so we don't, but it's like, well, even if other people were doing it, there would still be people who are just like, oh no, I'm not gonna share that. It makes them feel uncomfortable. Or they want something that's just private to themselves. You can't feel that. I mean, I actually do feel that way about like my, I don't know, religious beliefs or lack thereof, where it's, I don't know. I don't know how I would react if somebody walked up to me in the South and was just like, what church do you go to? I'm like, ma'am, like, I don't know your name. I don't, I mean, it just, honestly, like I work with so many people who are so like I had no idea for like months, if not years, like how religious they were or how, how seriously they took it. Because at work, we were working, like it just there was no reason for religion to come up.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't. And I understand that that's apparently unique in the United States. That you only get that if you're in certain areas, but for those of us who have that, it's just like kind of wild. And I don't know. My biggest thing is like finding your voice for sharing within your spaces, and not feeling ashamed of who you are. And that's not easy depending on, I'm finding that it's not easy depending on the area you're in with religion, because, even if you are very religious, but you happen to be the wrong religion, like that, can come back and bite you.
So one thing I've noticed is like who's able to express outrage. I know something that you're used to, that I'm used to, is being Black and being angry about something, but not being able to voice it through anger. You have to find like, oh, I just really wanted to have this pleasant conversation with you today, and did you happen to notice? And it's just like this totally weird thing. And
I usually resort to jokes, usually against the person that I'm talking to. I get insanely passive aggressive because I'm not allowed to be angry.
Yeah, and and I noticed this through my favorite thing to do in bed, which is watch wrestling. And I noticed that like certain characters could play on their culture's stereotypes around their rage. So for a guy to be like the Celtic warrior and he's just got a good old Irish temper, he's probably gonna have a little bit too much to drink, and then of course he just wants to throw fists and fight. Like that's this whole character, that can be his whole personality. That's fine. The Scottish psychopath is like, whoa, I got a healthy Scottish temper. Even when they're talking about like backstage shit, even when it's like, well, yeah, once in a while I totally unprofessionally walk out on the show because I didn't like the way the show was booked. You're like, yeah, I don't think you're supposed to do. I think that's highly unprofessional. But it's like, oh, I got a good Scottish temper. It's you never see this with Black people. It's never cute to be the angry Black man. It's never worked into the story. It's never.
Feral animal. Oh my God.
So you're like, wow, like it's so funny. Like other cultures can literally like work their rage into their personality and their identity, and like for Black people, like that's not allowed. And I think, again, hopefully people are reflecting, but same can be said of a lot of atheists, right? The whole stereotype, the whole thing you have to avoid being is the angry atheist, right? That's the biggest no-no, right? So,
and I mean, it's even kind of crazy because like you don't even have to do much at that point. Like once you've been coined as an angry something, like anything where you're just like, what's going on here? So, oh, whoa, temper, like it.
This angry feminist doesn't want people saying misogynist things in a public chat. What kind of SJW nonsense is this? Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. All right, look, y'all, we gotta let Maya go. Maya's sick. She done hung out with us and done the thing. Hey, look, I said let's come talk about
we did the
people
thing.
We actually like, and we did the thing. We did the thing. And they have me on record now saying they're Christians I like and I don't hate and I don't have the energy to deconvert and I don't have smoke for. I did still say it was a problem, but
you did, but you like nice old ladies, all right? Yeah. And you're not gonna smack nice old ladies around.
Yeah.
Right, Jay, I'm so mad.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint. All right, look, y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Definitely want to thank all of the mods and the absolute superstar job that they're always doing, keeping everything under control. And thanks to everybody who showed up and was in the chat. And thanks so much to all of the people who watch later. All right. I think I'm supposed to do some banners. All right. Don't forget to check out the other shows on Skeptic Haven. We've got the Black Free Thinkers on Monday. Saturday's the Global Atheists. 30 and 60, the Women Atheists on Load, and Let's Talk on Sunday. I think there are more shows.
Did they get rid of half the shows?
Yeah, I don't see them on the thing. So, all right, let's see. And then where is the? All right, y'all. I'm having trouble finding the banners. Where are all the banners? All right. Let's thank the patrons. Paul Cammish, Karen Butcher, Hells Bells, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Tara S. Ryan, D. Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sunny Shell, Phil Calderone. And then we've got members, which include Cynthia McDonald, Kelly Laughlin, Logan Fisher, and tons of other folk, I guess that's supposed to say. Gang, we'll figure out the banners. Look, thanks so much for tuning in. Also, Skeptic Haven's looking for volunteers, so please email skeptichaven@gmail if you're interested. I don't know what else to say, but thank you guys. This show is so cool, and we get a lot of great feedback on it, and it's really awesome to just share the stage with Maya and get to talk about these issues with you guys. So thank you so much. Maya, anything you want to let the people know about coming up?
We're going to be on Bad Science Sunday, this Sunday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, talking about bad science with people.
Bad science with people. Definitely tune in 9:30 p.m. on Sundays. And you can catch me on Sundays on my channel with a hot program with my one black friend. And then occasionally when I get time to get up to it and do a stream. All right. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Said I'm gone.